board in 2011 and was appointed Chief Executive Officer, NDTV Group, holding the overall authority and responsibility for all aspects of the company. Joining him on stage, again, two men that don't need any introduction, Mr. Anand Mahindra, Chairman, Mahindra Industries, and Mr. Aditya Puri, MD, HDFC Bank. Vikram, stage is all yours. I request you to introduce our speakers and take this on. Thank you.
Mr. Puri and Mr. Mahindra, please come up and join us. Right, it's absolutely fantastic to have both of you here with us. And if we can just try and set the agenda for the next 40, 45 minutes or so. I think it seems to be clear to a lot of people that we are at an inflection point in the way digital is going to continue to impact all of us. And we've seen a very clear indication of that in what we've just had with demonetization, where now it seems that they're saying that the real reason is to push everyone onto digital payments. Perhaps if we could get you to talk about this from three different perspectives. Number one, what is happening at a global level and for the nation as a whole? So the country, the globe as a whole, how are we going to be approaching a digital future? Number two, from the point of view of individual companies, is the business model going to change? Is the way all businesses are going to approach their consumers? That's already changing. What's going to happen going forward? And thirdly, from the point of view of individuals, because it is very possible that for all of us, the way we approach life, the way we approach employment is going to change. Perhaps many of us are going to be replaced by robots, who knows? Lots of changes coming. So with that in mind, maybe we can approach it from all three of these. I'm going to request each of you to speak maybe for 3 minutes, and then we can have a more freewheeling discussion after that. Pehle aap. Okay. Mr. Mahindra, you win.
Vikram, the lure of a valedictory session, frankly, is that after you had intense discussions for a few days and deep dives and so on, I think we get the luxury to sort of ponder on the traffic and ideas that you indulged in, and genuinely have a fireside chat, even though it may be a little hard. I want to do that, if I may, with your permission, just sit back and have a relaxed conversation as we all promised each other we would do. And so what I'd like to do is maybe...
Right thing to do.
So what I'd like to do is maybe make it a little broader. And I just, in the spirit of that kind of reflection, I wanted to share 2 or 3 reflections I've been having. And basically it would be on how does one deal with a world according to Trump, which is coming in. The second one just about NASSCOM and its role in that new world. And finally, just the theme of this conference, just very quick overview on these 3. First of all of us, I'm sure, get up every morning and the first thing we do is look to see what Mr. Trump has tweeted. As usual, he's getting the highest ratings for this reality show. No one's going to dispute that with him. And he's become an object of derision for a lot of media because of his whimsicality. After all, America still is powerful. He can wake up and keep us on edge, whether it's about H-1B visas, whether it's about a border tax, whether it's about a one-state policy in China, and so on. The reality is, however, that his Make America Great Again policy is going to make America a wonderful place to invest in. And the stock market is already cheering. Our group is going to double our bets on America because we think it's going to be very robust. The problem is that Make America Great Again is about reimagining America. It's not about reimagining the world. And the problem and opportunity is that there is space for a country and a leader to try and fill that vacuum that's going to come because the President of America, the leader of the free world, is not reimagining the world. And I think this is an enormous opportunity for India. I was a very young kid in the 60s, but I think India had that kind of opportunity in the 60s. India itself was a big idea. the largest democracy in the world, pulling people out of poverty. We had a charismatic leader. And he came up with a number of big ideas. The non-aligned movement, frankly, was a big idea. It became the maligned movement, but it was a big idea. His idea of the IITs, his idea of creating new infrastructure. India became a laboratory for reimagination. And then, of course, as we all know, I think Nehru forgot that in order to continue to have influence over the world, you needed to have an energetic economy and one that was engaged. But he led us into seclusion, and that's where we lost our influence. At this point, Justin Trudeau is trying to fill the gap. I don't think his economy is large enough, has the heft to do that, nor is it populous enough. Xi Jinping was at Davos, where you were, very smoothly trying to fill that gap, talking about being the leader of the world. But I think China will always be feared. It may be respected. I don't think it'll be admired, nor could it be a leader of the free world. And that leaves a wonderful gap for India to come right into this spot. And it's a time for big ideas. What could those ideas be? Well, we could serve as the bridge builder at a time when nations are getting separated. Maybe we'll become a venue for settlements. We, of course, have our own issues with our neighbors, which perhaps we have to solve creatively and in a very imaginative way. But there are opportunities to do that. In the economic sphere, frankly, space. We just had an amazingly successful launch. Maybe India can inflame the passions and the imagination of people through frugal personal space travel. Why should the next space version of Hyperloop might have to come out of India? You could look at other such issues, perhaps climate change, which President Trump has turned his back on. India could be the leader, whether it's in renewables, as we are trying to do in solar energy. So I believe there's an opportunity. And then you come to NASSCOM. NASSCOM could be seen in its basest form as a trade body. But the people who are in this room and the predecessors of CP and his ilk, they in fact repositioned India in the imagination of the world. From snake charmers to software gurus, the people in this room is who we owe that repositioning of India to. And my simple point is that NASSCOM has to see this as its time to also help reimagine India's positioning in the world. Right now, we're getting swept in this narrative about IT companies being threatened, our model being threatened. Frankly, that's because everybody perhaps falls prey to the fallacy of thinking of Indian software people as brown-skinned bots. That's what we are. We are just brown-skinned bots who don't add any value. But Indians are whole-brained people. At the end of the day, it's not only about algorithms, or we would have been priced out of this market a long time ago. So my suggestion to NASSCOM, and what I'd love to hear in the interactive session, is what are the big ideas that NASSCOM can come up to? How are we reimagining what our position is going to be? Everybody is worried about the H-1B visa. In any case, we are being threatened with a different kind of IT about the cloud. Well, why shouldn't India be the app of choice, an India app on tap? Why shouldn't the cloud be brown instead of being a gray one, as people are talking about? But if we take that model put it into focus and do offshoring, then H-1Bs simply expedite offshoring to India through new communication technology and ideally raise our margins, as they did for Tech Mahindra many years ago when we were forced by British Telecom to switch to a 90-10 model, and we were cursing them for it, but it raised our margins. So finally, as I said, when you come to the theme of this conference, I'm very pleased that this theme is reimagining and not re-engineering. Because if you're going to be a leader, then leaders are architects. Leaders are not plumbers. And leaders have to, in a sense, reimagine what the future is. So I read in the paper, CP, that you've postponed or deferred your forecast for NASSCOM for the year. I actually think that's a brilliant move. Because if you had simply done your Excel sheet work and said, we're going to get 8% or we are revising downwards our projection, that's re-engineering, that's plumbing. If you really want to signal that we are reimagining ourselves, we are going to disrupt ourselves, then you pause. and you reflect. And the first step in reimagining is to recognize that things have changed, that the landscape has changed. So I want to compliment you for doing that. I think we should take that not as a sign of floundering in the dark, but of reshaping a dark room, putting more light onto it. So I'll stop there, and as I said, I'm looking forward to an interactive conversation on what some of these big ideas could be.
Right, Mr. Mahindra, I think that's as brilliant a job of reimagining as I have ever heard, and it's absolutely painting a vision that there is no reason that India should not aspire to. There's always been a sense of underconfidence in this country, and I think the vision that you have painted, use the changes that are happening in the world to actually position the country as a possible leader of the free world. And there's actually no reason why that cannot happen. We should all remember that by 2030, India will be the third largest economy in the world, just a little behind the United States. There was a time in the past when we used to be the leader, certainly in economic terms in the world, so there's no reason why we can't take that position again. So you've given us something to think about, and we will certainly discuss it in greater detail, but Mr. Puri, can I just get you to give some opening comments?
Yeah. So since Anand has covered the global aspects, I'll come down a little bit to what I know a little more about. So fundamentally, the way we are seeing financial services, and that you can use as a surrogate for how we see businesses to be reimagined, is when you had the convergence of computing, telecommunication, and media, the world changed for us. So when we look today, we see information traveling with so much intensity and speed that networks are substituting markets with the customer at the center. He's no longer a participant, a passive participant in a targeted market of a company. He's an active participant in the network. So fundamentally what this does is it moves the power from the producer to the consumer. So you have a situation where competition is blurring. Almost anybody who wakes up is now, when I go to the analyst, he's supposed to be my competition. I'd love to cover that. I unfortunately don't think so. So competition is blurring. You have a secular shift in computing, analytics, mobility, all of that which can change your business models. You have a situation where you do have to move consumer, and geography is really dead. So it doesn't make a difference where you are going to be positioned because you can produce the same thing as it goes along. When we see this and we look at what they've done overseas, people have not really recomputed the world. They have in a way and they haven't. So the people who leverage the change to come up with a far better product to meet customer expectations and also change their business model really made a market cap of a couple of trillion. So it's Amazon, Google, Facebook, etc. In the process, they also blew a lot of fellows who stuck to their traditional leading, I have the distribution, the name, brand, etc., out of the market. So when we looked at it, and I went and I saw, because a lot of people were questioning whether there would be a validity of a bank, which way will it go, whether you need complete reimagining. I went and spent about 15, 20 days in Silicon Valley to understand what these brilliant fellows were doing, and I do believe all you guys are brilliant, but we can catch on to some of it. So we went there, and when I looked at it, there was nobody who was reimagining a bank. So whether you look at Apple Pay, which is another version of a wallet, or you look at Paytm, or you look at Loan.com, all of these were going to ride on the basic system of a bank, financial services. So they wanted to move to a world where a bank was a financial service provider. What do you call it? Software as a service. They thought banking as a service. Unfortunately, I don't think I want that. So we went back and said, what can we do? We split it into two. And I think that changes the world, and it completely changes the way we are looking, at least for financial services and the attendant businesses, which can be an extension, as to what we can do in the future. We came back, we altered our business model in its sense to be consumer-centric, but more important, to have a completely customer-centric bias, which was enabled by elimination of sequential processing, and you have consecutive processing, which means that you can completely cut your costs. We are looking at conversational banking with chatbots, and I think that fundamentally changes where we are going. We were able to do a loan in 10 seconds because everybody can look at the same thing at the same time. We have our own wallet. We have a shopping portal where we can actually discount anybody in the market. Plus, he gets a return on credit cards. So I think we're going to give competition to Amazon there. We also have a situation where we now just design what we call, like you have a Nike, design your own shoe. We figured you could design your own loan against shares or financial securities. You have the security with me, you have the demat with me, you have the savings account, you have the margin. Put your buttons in and decide how much loan you want to take. Give me the interest. So I'm quite happy with that. As far as the wallets are concerned, I think wallets have no future. There's not enough margin in the payment business for the wallets to have a future. As far as the new banks are concerned, they will have to spend like the others on getting customers. It's like making chicken curry without the chicken. Get the chicken, then I'll tell you how much competition there will be. So between that, there are 4 areas that are there: loans, payment services, e-commerce, and rejigging your business. We've done all of that, and we're proud to say now you think money, you think HDFC Bank. That's why I'm here. Sushma, this was not just for you. This was to do my marketing as well. So you can have a mobile app which does all your banking. You can download my wallet, which will allow you to go into e-commerce. You can download UPI, and that will allow you P2P. And so I can give you everything. I can sell a mutual fund. I can sell you a car. I can give you a test drive on a car virtually today. If you want to buy a car, I can give you a test drive on a car. I can give you which dealer has the car. I can tell you which color you want. I can show you the interior, and then press one more button and I'll give you.
While you're marketing yourself, just keep out of my business, will you?
So that's going very well.
I was waiting for you to start saying something about the media. That was going to be next.
Media only exists in India. They're a wild elephant otherwise.
We interrupted you.
No problem. So with that, we do believe we will continue to, and if you read the latest Harvard Business Review, now what it shows is as long as if I'm a market leader in a particular product and I can provide the same benefit on digital, which is basically price, convenience, i.e. whichever access device he wants to use. We're working, by the way, I'm helping your model here. We're working with Mahindra to actually on the dashboard introduce banking. So while you wait at a traffic jam, you can bank. So I couldn't care less. You come, you take money from me, I earn. You can access, if you don't have a phone, I'll use Sushma's to access. You can go to a desktop, you can go to a computer, you can go to a TV. You can then, you move on to quicker codes, etc. And the last, and then I'll stop, is it completely changes the availability of the market. We will move to a loan size of 10,000 because I can now do a consumer durable where I may not have the information, but that's where you use artificial intelligence to use points that are not necessarily connected. But since you have 100 of these points, you can come up with a trend line and thereby make my credit easier and just have straight through processing. So we're doing robotics, we're doing chatbots, we're doing blockchain, and we're doing experiments with a lot of the guys. I'd encourage you, if you have a good product that can make me money, then I'll help you make money.
All right. So with that rather fascinating way of how a business can reimagine itself, did I hear you saying that wallets are dead and have absolutely no future?
I never said that. I said the wallets proposition as a valid economic proposal is doubtful. There's no money in payment business. The current loss of Paytm reported is 1,651 crores. And you can't have a business that says pay a 500 bill and take 250 cash back. So come up with something else. And if he wants to copy Alibaba, he can't because the Indian regulators are better.
Okay, so you've just sort of disrupted and reimagined a lot of the possible business models after what's happened with demonetization, which I am going to come back and talk to you in some detail about.
And the last one, since you interrupted me and you interrupted my thought. Yeah. All these loan fellows, where are they going to get the cash from? If they trouble me, I won't lend them the money. Okay, now let's carry on.
Okay. So, all right, so Paytm, if you're listening to this, people giving loans, if you're listening to this, you've got lots to worry about. While we give you some time to reimagine your business plan, let's just again zoom all the way out, come back then, and end up again with the individual. I just want to take you up on the thought, because actually you're the second prominent business leader, actually from the same platform, who in 3 days has said that Trump is possibly a big opportunity for India. And I just want to take that point forward. Is it possible? So you said India can then bid for the leadership of the free world, which is a very big possibility. The second thing, and I'm sure a lot of people here in NASSCOM and others are going to be thinking about it, given that America is going to be more inward looking, you can't easily go and get jobs there, create hubs there, make it easier to invest in India, and set India up as the same sort of a place that America once was. Why do you have to have Sundar Pichai and Satya Nadella and all sitting out there? They could all be back here building businesses out here. Is this going to be an inflection point, positive inflection point for the Indian economy, the Trump era?
At the danger of being repetitive, yes, Vikram. I clearly see that any disruption, and this is a cliche, any discontinuity is an opportunity. And I mentioned it only in passing, but I'll repeat it again. This is, in fact, I think, CP, before you joined the company, and it was called Mahindra British Telecom, which ironically was started back in '85. So we're one of the pioneers, but we were a sweatshop. And then we started diversifying our customer base, getting into the kind of areas that TCS and Infosys and Wipro were doing. We still had British Telecom as a large client. And then they got this particularly forceful CIO who was given a mandate to cut cost. And we had something like a 70-30, I think, ratio of offshore and onshore. And he said, I want it to be 90-20 in 6 months. And we looked at him like this man was Attila the Hun. He didn't understand business. He was going to be completely unreasonable, had a personal agenda. We were forced to do it. And we look back at this man in gratitude. Because what he did was completely change our model of business and lower our cost dramatically. I see that as an opportunity here. We are talking all the time about IT now becoming, as I said, on the cloud, being an app. Then why on earth is it that we should be worrying so much about the onshore presence? Obviously, customers there have a desire and a comfort level at having a minimum onshore presence. Those companies are not going to want to have us pass on the cost of higher visas. So they're going to be susceptible, in my opinion, to a spiel from us, saying that with today's communication, with today's interactive capabilities, 24/7 capabilities, we will be able to maintain our costs to you, provided we can increase the offshore component. As I said, make India an app on tap, put us on the cloud, we're the cloud they tap into. And that could actually allow us to innovate, plus maintain our costs to them. I see it as a huge opportunity.
But does the government need to then reimagine the entire India story to absolutely be correct for that? We've heard just one person saying, again, a day or two back, that actually, thanks to all that's happened with demonetization, the Made in India story right now is more like Mad in India. Everything is not working. There's still policy flip-flops. Red tape still exists. Bureaucracy still exists. Tax terrorism hasn't gone away completely. Is there things that we need to do right now to completely change the paradigm, to position India, to take advantage of the opportunity that you're identifying?
You know, one of the biggest pieces of folklore about the Indian IT industry is that it flourished because the government ignored it. That was the history of the Indian IT industry. Thank God they weren't looking at us, which is why we succeeded. So this is not the time at which to go and look at the government to make any changes. I think we don't need them. You don't need to keep looking for any handouts, any kind of situation which enables us. This industry will enable itself. It's moving far too quickly for any industry to constrain it. There will be new technological parameters that will come into play. Innovation will find ways for us to deliver our products and services. The last thing I would do is look to going to the government and asking them to do something for us.
But that's true of the IT industry, but broader, if you're looking at the entire economy, you're looking at the entire country, there are other things that you will require. Infrastructure, for example, roads, airports, the rest of it.
So, Vikram, what is it that I could say that would not, again, be something we've heard ad nauseum?
Yeah.
Whether it's infrastructure, whether it's transparency. Look, let me put it this way. There's clearly been a lot of dialogue on the demonetization issue, but you seem to be nudging us to be talking a little bit about that. And to my mind, you know, the question that the objective here, in my opinion, and for whatever conversations I've had with government, first and foremost was a change in mindset. If you look at the man who runs this country, And you look at Swachh Bharat, and he said it. He's the first person to go to the UN and talk about toilets. Now, that was a risk. I don't think he has a fetish about toilets. He really wanted to change a mindset. And when you have a conversation with him, he thinks the thing that holds India back is our mindset. And we talk about this, all of us talk about this at cocktail parties. You know, we are such bright people, we could do X, Y, Z if only our mindset changed. I think this man's actually trying to change mindsets. Now, yes, there may have been many... And I remember once when I had a conversation with him, I said, he understands very clearly what the correlations to this mindset change are. You know, tourism is a very big hot button for him. He believes tourism is a higher margin service business than IT, to be honest. That's his real view. He feels it has higher margins. And he sees the lack of cleanliness in India as an impediment to India getting a huge chunk of that. That's a very enlightened thought.
And that's absolutely correct, by the way. If India was cleaner, you'd probably have far more tourists
So he's a
coming
very
in.
practical person. Now, we can argue till kingdom come about whether he was hoping for a windfall, and Aditya can speak to this, of extinguished currency, which perhaps could come in and which could be distributed into the Janadhan accounts. Maybe. They will now have to fish it out of the 9 lakh accounts that have come into the banks, and as the old Hindi movies thing, I don't think that Dharmendra was, chun chun ke dekhenge abhi. So chun chun ke nikalenge, but he'll get somewhere the deficit to be bridged. He may not have gotten that, but I would tell you that I think he's created two things, transparency and traceability. That for sure, with the help of people in this room, he's going to be able to do. And I certainly think he's changed the mindset. Everybody is going to think twice about going back to their old ways. And from what I understand, and I'd rather turn it over to Aditya here, the conversion to digital has certainly occurred at a pace much faster than it would have without this effort at mindset change.
Mr. Puri, demonetization. Well, actually, I wasn't nudging you, but now that he has raised the subject, what choice do I have but to ask you how demonetization has helped you reimagine and or re-engineer?
Okay. The first part...
Blame him, not me.
No, but there's nobody to blame. I'm quite happy to talk about it. First, I think demonetization is being demonized for nothing. When I say nothing, I'm not for a moment ignoring that there was hardship to people, and everybody's talked all the way to Sunday, so I'll leave that. And I'm sympathetic to that, but I don't want to go into that. What has it done? India has the highest percentage of cash in the world at 92%. That leads to corruption. Let's be very clear about it. Now, when we look back and look at it dispassionately, there are 3 or 4 things that we're very happy with. Has more money come into the system? Answer is yes. Are interest rates trending down? Yes. Will they trend down further? Probably. So there is more money in the system, which will lead to better interest rate. Is there going to be a larger base of people in this country paying income tax? The answer is yes. And there's no discussion and denying that either. Are we going to be able to go and serve better the financially excluded? The answer is absolutely. So whether it is, and I will give you a few illustrations which will actually contradict a lot of these things that have been talked about to vilify the thing. So it will allow financial inclusion. Will it lead to a lot of transparency? I think so. Will it force people to be more efficient? And will it lead to cost reduction? The answer is yes. And finally, the government, if you see, they have made an announcement that they will only receive and pay digitally. Now, it's very much more difficult that you pay somebody 100,000, now you say you've got to give me 30,000 as bribe, you ain't going to get it. The only way you get it is if you have cash, you have 100,000, you give him 70,000 bucks. So I think it will reduce corruption. It will, a lot of people don't understand that cash is very, very expensive to handle. A printed note goes out in 1.5 years. Replacement is expensive. So this big talk about so much has cost that, it costs you just don't know, it costs you every 2 years. It encourages rent seekers. It's very expensive for the economy as well. I have to take the cash, I have to store it, then I have to give it to RBI, then RBI has to store it, and stuff like that. Now, when they said rural India, I have been to at least 6 parts of rural India in the last 45 days. The sowing was at a record level. Let's be very clear about this. Agriculture did not suffer. So let's talk facts. They did not suffer. Number 2, we have mechanized, or let's say digitized, call it what you may, the entire structure for the mandis, and we thought they would go back when the cash came. So the mandi, the trader, the farmer who is produced to the mandi, and the fellow who the farmer buys from, we've either got him on UPI or we've got him on ENET, basically on a closed user group functioning. And when I talked to them and I said, will you go back? Because I'm putting in a lot of effort. I'm developing this software at my cost, and they at that point didn't say anything. When I asked him now, he says, why should I go back? Am I nuts? So I said, why? He said, do you know that when I go to the mandi, every man and his brother knows I'm carrying 10 lakhs? Do you think I'm not shivering in my pants? The farmer says, when I go to sell my produce, every fellow knows that I've come back. I go to my house and I put this cash under my mattress. Everybody knows. The banya closes his shop 4 hours after banking hours. He has to carry the money home, and then he has to send his man at peak hours to deposit it in there. So that has changed. A lot of people have criticized, oh, it's only semi-urban and urban phenomenon. So for Christ's sake, never mind. That's where 80% of the large transactions happen, and if the cash goes into rural India, that's fine. So some portion will have cash coming from rural India. For us ourselves, I think somewhere between 2 and 5 years, you have hastened the process. Everybody is talking. The corporate is talking as to how he can digitize into his entire universe. We have figured that out, whether it's a supplier to the supplier, the debtor, who is going to pay. Everybody is being paid in cash. And if they were actually true to the word, the only problem should come when how many landless laborers, how many daily workers are there? Why the hell are the rest of you fellows using cash? Then the old man, I'm from Punjab, so there is a fellow in our little relationship manager. I'm surprised she travels 30 kilometers in Punjab on a scooter. She said, Tau, he says, I want to send money to Chandigarh. He said, Tau, yahan baith ke kar deta hu. She did it on the phone. And that fellow says he's calling a Jadoo banker. I've got all his business. He doesn't want to travel all that way. We are going and selling our portal as saying you can have the cheapest shopping with no logistical problem, because we've got hyper-local, which is people around us, which is working through. Most people have picked up. My wife buys her grocery now on the mobile, and she doesn't have to tell me every day, can you bring so much cash? I'm not bringing cash back. So I think it's damn good, yeah. So what's the difficult question you want?
Well, okay, let's move on to another difficult question then. I think we are talking out here about the possibility of reimagining mindsets as well. Now, in this budget, there was a very clear vision that was painted by the finance minister. He pointed to a very real problem, which is that a very small percentage of the country actually pays taxes. Yes. A very small percent of the country, therefore, is taking on the onus of paying for all the dishonest. And therefore, he said we need to move to a system where you have much better compliance, much easier compliance. People are following the rules. It's easy to follow the rules. There's no harassment if you're following the rules. And therefore, the honest don't have to pay for the dishonest. This is another big idea and another area of reimagination that needs to be done top to bottom in the country. Have we moved far enough along that? And if not, what needs to be done here? I'm going to throw that to you and then to Anand.
I think we moved quite a bit. 2 things. I don't know whether most people are aware of it or not. What happened was everybody who people said, oh, 200 lakhs black money didn't come. Just because you deposit it in a bank doesn't mean it becomes white. The good thing that they've done is everyone who had to deposit money had to give a PAN number. They have a bunch of fellows sitting in Delhi deduping that PAN number with your income tax return that you filed. And that's the basis on which returns are coming. So he won't be able to get away, and they're looking at remote. If you have to deal with the government, and which is the recommendation I made, why don't you make all your tendering, all your applications, everything digital? so that there is an audit trail. You come through fine. I think it's a very big idea.
So moving ahead from just on the demonetization part on that, in general, is digital the answer for sorting that big problem that we've been plagued with for such a long time, which is holding back the country? Corruption, red tape, bureaucracy, policy flip-flops, a predatory government system, low-level officials which are sucking the blood of the common person. That's the bane of the country, is digitization or various forms of digital. Do they hold the solution to those problems?
I think so. If you think you're going to change a fellow down below who thinks a bribe is a part of his salary, you're not going to do it by any amount of shouting. But if you're going to pay him digitally, or if I say, for instance, in Indonesia, I make an application, 14 days, I don't get a reply, it's considered approved. A combination of those two, I think it will never be eliminated. Is there in the US, is there in UK, it will never be eliminated. Will there be a drastic reduction? My view, may take a little time, and if the government follows through what they're saying, I think yes.
Will digital solve some of these issues?
You know, let me use an image, if I may. Let's imagine India as a glass. It's got 3 layers, some kind of ice cream with 3 layers, let's say. You've got the creamy layer on top, you've got the rich, you've got the rural, the underprivileged at the bottom, and you've got a kind of very thick layer. And this image works even for government, with the bureaucracy in the middle layer. If you're the CEO of the country and you want to stir things up, it's usually that middle section that just prevents anything from being stirred. That's where commerce is, that's where the corruption is, that's where vested interests are. You can come in and stir the top gently, and to be honest, as a large company, I can tell you very clearly that corruption in New Delhi and at the top levels is virtually non-existent now. Virtually non-existent. You talk about the lowest layer, they're in any case with you. They're with you because they have for years, in a sense, seen that layer on top as being an oppressive layer. And so they're with you. That's the people who voted this government in and who are cheering the demonetization because at least somebody else ko takleef ho rahi hai. The people who oppressed me are being oppressed. How do you get past that sludge of the middle layer? And that is the conundrum for everybody who's run India. I think this government has come in at a time when technology provides you with that optical fiber. You can use Aadhaar, you can get right to the bottom with direct benefit transfer, which is never being talked about. To my mind, the answer is in things like direct benefit transfer, where you cut through that sludge. And when you cut through that sludge and then you start stirring the glass, you suddenly find that what was impossible to stir earlier is being stirred now.
Right, so if I can now move on to looking at the crystal ball as to, there are the policies that are being done, what governments are doing. And the second is the march of technology, which is continuing to proceed. I was interviewing Sundar Pichai a short while back, and he said there are inflection points every 10 years. So you had the computer, you had the internet, you had mobile phones, now artificial intelligence, machine learning, all of this, and there's another possible big disruption that's coming. How is this going to impact the individual? And are you seeing the country, corporates, but also individuals? Are things going to change? Jobs, for example, it's already a big problem. Is it going to get worse going forward?
I'll let Aditya do, but I was just noticing our time is running out. Are we going to get the interact? I'd love to hear some.
Yeah, I will. So I'm just going to get you to answer this, and then we'll turn to the others.
Some jobs will disappear, new jobs will be created, but I think one of the reasons why you've got this backlash and people like Trump and everybody coming in is because this neoliberal globalized world has resulted in people losing job and not being retrained and remaining unemployed. So I think it's very important that we recognize that machine learning, robotics, etc., artificial intelligence will take over some amount of jobs. In India, I don't think it's a problem, at least for financial services, because the market is so large. And so if the credit guy is not looking and passing an application, he is actually analyzing how we can use it to go down market. For instance, now we think we can actually make microfinance a great business. In fact, we had, and we think with digital, we'll change the cost by 4%. I make money, that fellow gets served. So I think you're creating lots of new businesses, you're creating geography, You are creating employment and unemployment. I think employment will be larger, but that retraining is an issue.
All right, let me now throw it open to get some comments from, well, okay, there are some questions that are coming up on the screen. So we had, demonetization, we've already discussed that great. And autonomous tractor for India, that's one other question. Are we going to see an autonomous tractor for India? Corruption, I'm trying to see how many of these questions we've already touched on. You want to talk about autonomous tractors?
Yes, I did. In fact, to be honest, there was so much talk about autonomous cars that I felt compelled at, I think, one of our annual general meetings to just state out loud that the sequence of autonomy, if you will, is going to come first to tractors. Tractors don't run into anyone in the fields. They don't cause any paranoia. They're the easiest to make autonomous, and they raise productivity dramatically if you can make them autonomous. So we're going to do that for sure. I have to admit, in full disclosure, as you know, we manage Mitsubishi tractors in Tokyo, and they are already well ahead in the game. So we've got a collaborative network with our Detroit center and with Mitsubishi tractors to bring autonomous tractors in. The second thing that will turn autonomous are trucks. Once again, will unleash productivity on a massive scale. The biggest problem today in turnaround is the issue of drivers and of their fatigue. So if you can create dedicated lanes, which is more possible to do, that's going to be the second stage of autonomy, and then finally you'll get back to cars. But I just wanted to quickly tell you something here, that we talk a lot about digitization as if this world is going to turn into a kind of form of a robot. Elon Musk the other day talked about merging man and machine. But I must tell you, just the other day, somebody sent me a little a video of an accident in a tunnel in Korea where there was an accident in front, and all these people noticed that there was an accident, and everyone, by some kind of common consensus, just quietly went and parked their cars on the side to make way for the ambulance to get through. This has got to be one of my most retweeted tweets ever. Almost 1 million people saw that. You know why? Because everybody likes to understand that was not about autonomous drivers. Only human beings can do that. So I have faith in human beings at the end of the day.
Yeah, and it's worth noticing that artificial intelligence even now can only begin to scratch the complexity of the human brain. It's far, far away from getting there. All right, a couple of questions from the audience. Comments from the audience? Well, we've taken some of these already. Yeah, okay. So, new ways of corruption are likely to come in. Demonetization leads to people reimagining new ways of corruption, does very little to actually eliminate it. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely not, yeah. This is obviously looking at a very pessimistic. It needs a mindset change. Will there be corruption even after demonetization and digitization? Yes. But if you keep a dog in a house, you're less likely to be robbed than the next fellow who doesn't have a dog.
Right. That's one way of looking at it. Before we end, maybe couple of quick questions about where you seeing technology saving the world? Because all of this is fine, everything that we've discussed. In India, you're already continuing to see the severe effects of pollution. Emissions is something that is being spoken about. Climate change is still there. Is technology going to change all of that as well? Is technology going to, for example, solve emission problems, climate change problems?
You know, whenever I hear the phrase save the world, I immediately put my sort of seatbelt on. I think that's a hazardous statement to say. There's nothing that I would come out and say is going to save the world. Who will save the world? It's going to be poets. Poets will save the world. Not technology, not computers. It's people who use imagination. You got a title for this of reimagining. We can argue till kingdom come about artificial intelligence and reimagining. People who will oppose oppression, people who will oppose the pollution of the climate, they're not machines who are going to oppose that. It's going to be poets, musicians, writers. They're going to save the world, not technology.
All right. So a very human future still looms ahead. We're not all going to be taken over by robots. That's the sort of a vision he's painting.
Absolutely not. Technology always overestimates itself.
Technology is always overestimated, and I can't think of a better line on which to end a session, especially here at NASSCOM. So thank you both so much for being with us. Technology always overestimated.
No, bye.
Absolutely captivating, super candid. This session couldn't have gotten better. The last but one session for the day. Gentlemen, I'm going to ask you to stay on stage. Vikram, I'm going to request you to hand over tokens of our appreciation to our stellar speakers. Let's get some poets in here, ladies and gentlemen, the next session, because poets are the ones who are going to change the world. And Vikram, thank you so much. As always, you were stellar.